Good morning, everyone. It's Monday, February 22nd, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Kim Mo-kyun. Before we get started, these are the stories we're following at the top of the hour. South Korea reported 332 new cases of COVID-19 on Monday, returning to the 300s after about a week of higher figures. Meanwhile, South Korea's prime minister has laid out more details about vaccinations set to start in South Korea on Friday. The situation in Myanmar continues to worsen, with one of the bloodiest protests taking place over the weekend. So far, 4 deaths and over 100 wounded have been reported. Protesters and civilians have gathered to pay tribute to the courage of the deceased. And starting next year in South Korea, Bitcoin will no longer be tax-free. Buyers will have to pay 20% tax when trading profits that exceed $2,260. We start with the COVID-19 situation in South Korea. The country reported 332 new cases of COVID-19 on Monday, returning to the 300s for the first time in about a week. Now, even so, cluster infections continue across the nation, especially from churches and hospitals. Of Monday's new cases, 313 were locally transmitted, most of which were in the greater Seoul area, and 19 were from overseas. 5 more people have died of the virus, raising the death toll to 1,562. Now, South Korea's prime minister has laid out more details about vaccinations that was set to start in South Korea on Friday. First will be the jab from AstraZeneca, as announced previously, but now we know day 2 on Saturday will see the rollout of the Pfizer vaccine. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
It's a big week for South Korea in its fight against the pandemic, as the country will begin its COVID-19 inoculation program, with AstraZeneca's vaccine being administered for the first time on Friday. The first jabs will be given to staff members and patients under the age of 65 at nursing hospitals and facilities. In addition to the AstraZeneca vaccine, the country will also begin administering 117,000 doses of Pfizer's vaccine to medical staff beginning Saturday. According to Prime Minister Chung Se-kyun on Sunday, 117,000 Pfizer doses will arrive on Friday, before the first jabs are administered to medical staff treating COVID-19 patients on Saturday. The Pfizer vaccines are a batch from the COVAX facility, and the 2-dose regimen will be able to inoculate 58,500 people. According to a recent survey, of the 360,000 people who are set to be the first to receive the vaccines, 94% have already agreed to get them. Some medical staff have raised concerns over the safety of the vaccines. However, according to the Prime Minister, the government has carefully verified the vaccine's safety and efficacy and have called on the vaccine recipients to get vaccinated. The first jabs will be administered some 400 days after South Korea confirmed its first case of COVID-19. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
With countries making all-out efforts to vaccinate their populations against COVID-19, the UK has expedited vaccination plans aiming to vaccinate all adults with their first dose by the end of July. Japan, which continues to report more and more cases, has received its second batch of Pfizer's vaccine. Our Kim Hyo-sun has a wrap-up.
Britain is speeding up its vaccinations against COVID-19, with its health authorities aiming to inoculate all adults with their first shot by July, 1 month earlier than initially planned.
We're now aiming to offer a vaccine to everybody in categories 1 to 9, that's those who are most vulnerable, and the over 50s and health and social care workers, and to do that by the 15th of April. And then all adults should be offered a jab by the end of July. We now think that we have the supplies to be able to do that.
The UK Health Secretary added that 1/3 of the country's adults, or about 17 million people, have already received their vaccines. Against this backdrop, the British government is mulling over easing lockdown restrictions, stressing that the accelerated vaccination target will enable the vulnerable people to be protected much sooner. Japan has received a second batch of 450,000 doses of the vaccine developed by Pfizer. This comes as the country reported over 1,000 new cases for the 6th consecutive day on Sunday. Tokyo began its vaccine rollout last week, with Pfizer's vaccine being the only one authorized by the government as of now. Meanwhile, COVID-19 vaccines from the UAE arrived in Gaza on Sunday through Egypt. According to local health authorities, Gaza has received 20,000 doses of Russia's Sputnik V vaccine, with a rollout to begin on Monday, first targeting medical workers as well as those with chronic illnesses. The delivery comes 3 months before the first Palestinian polls in 15 years are slated to be held. Kim Hye-san, Arirang News.
As the United States surpassed 500,000 COVID-19 deaths on Sunday, the country's top infectious disease expert has described the situation as something that's, quote, historic and terrible. Speaking on CNN's show on Sunday, Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, also added that Americans should still wear face masks into 2022. He also emphasized the need to double down on virus prevention measures to stop another catastrophic surge, given that new variants continue to spread quickly. The situation in Myanmar continues to worsen, with one of the bloodiest protests taking place over the weekend. Now, so far, 4 deaths and over 100 wounded have been reported. Protesters and civilians have gathered to pay tribute to the courage of the deceased. Our Choi Jung-yun reports.
Amid the bloodiest of protests on Saturday, since Myanmar's military takeover in early February, nationwide calls for democracy left at least 4 people dead and more than 100 injured. 2 deaths on Saturday came from protests in Myanmar's second-largest city, Mandalay, where police have used tear gas and water cannons as well as live ammunition. Local reports say one of the people killed was an 18-year-old boy who was shot in the head, and the other a 36-year-old carpenter who took a bullet to his chest and died from the wound later. On the same day, an anti-junta militia member was shot dead in the city of Yangon. All this comes just 1 day after the first death from the capital city Naypyidaw on Friday. A young woman who'd been shot by the police and had been left brain dead. On Sunday, hundreds of civilians gathered and held a candlelight vigil for those who have died during the last 21 days of protests across the country. Small memorial sites were also set up alongside protests to pay tribute to the victims.
We young people have our dreams, but this military coup has created so many obstacles. That's why we come out to the front of the protests. We really feel both sad and proud for the people who sacrificed their lives, and we promise that we will try our best to get democracy back for the sake of the lost lives.
The military junta has yet to comment on the deaths. According to one local association supporting political prisoners, as of Friday, some 570 people have been detained since the coup. Those behind bars include Myanmar's de facto leader Aung San Suu Kyi, as well as other government officials, celebrities, and political activists. Choi Jung-yun, Arirang News.
Starting next year in South Korea, the cryptocurrency Bitcoin will no longer be tax-free. According to the Ministry of Economy and Finance on Monday, income gained from trading the digital currency will be subject to tax. South Koreans will have to pay a 20% tax when trading profits exceed 2.5 million won, equal to $2,260. The new measure comes after the government recognized Bitcoin as a financial asset categorized under other income. Profits will have to be reported on income statements, with taxes to be paid every year in May. Around 360,000 workers at small and mid-sized firms in South Korea have been temporarily laid off due to the prolonged COVID-19 pandemic. That's 8 times more than 2 years ago and 32 times the same figure for workers at large corporations. According to data released by Statistics Korea on Monday, almost half of 750,000 laid-off SME workers in South Korea have left work because of the global crisis. Experts say the rise above the 300,000 mark is a clear indication of an economic slowdown, pointing out the need for strong countermeasures. The Bank of Korea announcing interest rate information and Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell testifying before the Senate Banking Committee are just some of the key economic events coming up this week. Our Seo Eun-kyung gives us a rundown of what's on the economic calendar for the week.
On Monday, Korea's Trade Ministry is set to announce the export and import volume from February 1st to 12th. Last month, the country posted a trade surplus for the 9th straight month. Outbound shipments increased near 11.5%, and inbound shipments rose at just over 30% on year. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell will present the semi-annual monetary policy report to the Senate Banking Committee on Tuesday local time, and the House Financial Services Committee a day after. The report, published on February 19th, stated they will be appropriate to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 0 to 0.25% until the labor market reaches what the Fed views as the maximum in terms of employment as well as the 2% inflation rate. The Fed has maintained the federal funds rate since May last year. On Wednesday, Statistics Korea will release birth rates for December 2020. As of November last year, South Korea's birth had fallen on year for 60 consecutive months, and the number of deaths had outnumbered birth for 13 months in a row. The Bank of Korea's Monetary Policy Board will announce the base interest rate on Thursday. It is widely expected that the central bank will keep their rate unchanged. Last month, the bank decided to maintain the benchmark interest rate at 0.5%. The central bank stated that a weakened global economy due to COVID-19 had led them to make that decision. The base rate had been capped at its record low since last May. 서은경, Arirang News.
In sports, tennis star Novak Djokovic won his 9th Australian Open on Sunday for his 18th Grand Slam victory. Despite battling a muscle injury, the Serbian superstar defeated Daniil Medvedev in 3 straight sets in the final. With 309 straight weeks as world number 1, he's set to tie Roger Federer's record of 310 weeks and shatter the record in March. Djokovic battled COVID-19 after he tested positive last June following a controversial mini-tournament he hosted in his home country. Korean-American author Tae Keller last month was awarded the prestigious Newbery Medal, dubbed the Nobel Prize of Children's Literature. When You Trap a Tiger was announced as the winner of this year's award, described as a masterpiece of magical realism that brings Korean folklore to life. Our Oh Soo-young spoke with the author herself on what inspired this masterpiece.
Unlocking the power of stories with a mystical Korean tiger, Tae Keller's When You Trap a Tiger cast a spell on readers around the world, winning the prestigious Newbery Medal this year. Told in a uniquely Korean-American narrative, the 27-year-old author won the prestigious Newbery Medal for 2021, with her second middle-grade novel about a young Korean-American girl named Lily. The quiet protagonist finds herself exploring her identity and heritage as she bargains with a mystical Korean tiger in the hope of healing her beloved grandmother, who is full of magical Korean folktales.
I think that there is a feeling sometimes, at least with people in America, that people should fit into one box and they should be one thing or the other. Like they should be Korean or American, but not Korean American, or they should be white or Asian, but not biracial. And so I hope that in telling stories like these, that kids who don't necessarily fit into one box can feel like they can be more than one thing and they can embrace their whole identity.
Inspired by Korean folk stories that often feature tigers, which symbolize courage, power, and resilience, Keller's journey to writing the book began by revisiting the tales she'd heard from her grandmother as a biracial child in Hawaii. Along the way, she was also emboldened by the strength of Korean women who had suffered greatly and silently throughout the generations, especially during the Japanese occupation of the nation.
Korean women especially have such a dark history and a lot of trauma in that history. And I'm so inspired that even despite how dark it is and that trauma, that they have been able to since tell some of their stories. And I just think that's so inspiring. And if they are able to tell their stories, then I should be able to tell mine as well, and also honor their stories in any way that I can.
Keller hopes to continue reaching children and young adults with books that inspire understanding and the exploration of identity amid diversity. The Newbery Award is regarded the most prestigious annual award in children's literature and has been given since 1922 by the American Library Association. 오수영 아리랑 뉴스.
Good morning. Eastern parts of the country are enduring intense dry weather and strong winds, triggering forest fires across that part of the country with dry weather alerts remain in place. So please be extra careful with anything that could start a fire. Meanwhile, the capital region and the Chungcheong-do provinces could see high levels of ultra-fine dust. So we'll need a face mask that can block ultra-fine dust today. The roller coaster temperatures continue from the mildest day of the season yesterday to freezing weather again tomorrow morning. So we should notice much colder air moving in as the evening arrives. This afternoon, though, will be a mild one. Seoul getting up to 12 degrees, Daegu at 22, Gyeongju at 23 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Then rain is only in the forecast for southern regions and on Jeju Island this week. The rest of us will have sunny skies with warm weather. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
That's a wrap for us at the hour on Arirang News. We'll be back with more of the day's headlines at noon Korea time, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching and goodbye.